And this brings up another thing, because there's other evidence that we wouldn't have known anything about when we were kids, but there's other evidence of their dysfunction right here. And it's this: produced by Tom Werman, associate producer Roy Thomas Baker. Why did they need an associate producer after they had Tom Werman? Tom Werman had originally been in Epic Records. And at Epic, he had been wildly successful. I mean, he had worked with Cheap Trick. He'd brought them on board. Molly Hatchet signed them. REO Speedwagon. He'd been involved with production. At Epic Records, he'd been involved with finding and producing albums that sold in the tens of millions of copies. And he got to a point, Tom Werman, the producer, that he told Epic, he says, I need a raise. I should be doing better than I am right now with all the records that I'm selling and all these bands and what have you that I brought in for the label, and they wouldn't give him his raise. And so Tom Werman quit. And then he got picked up by this record company right here, Elektra Records. And here at Elektra, he can't get along with Bob Krasnow, who was the leader of Elektra Records at the time. And so then Tom Werman decided to quit. But as he left Elektra Records, this is kind of important, they made a deal with him that he would produce 3 albums for Elektra. Now, this is really important again because Tom Werman is a multi-million selling producer. So the first thing that they have him do is he does this album for this little old band called Mötley Crüe. Shout at the Devil. And if you look in the back here, you'll actually see his name, produced by Tom Werman, and it's recorded by Jeff Workman, and also, and this is also important, on the inside here, you'll see that the A&R person for this record is Tom Zutaut. Okay, so he does this album with Mötley Crüe, and it's so successful, Tom Zutaut, who's the A&R guy, says, okay, we signed another band with Elektra that I think, because you did so well with Mötley Crüe, we want you to come in and work with this band called Dokken. Tom Werman didn't know anything about Dokken, so he goes in and he becomes the producer of this album under lock and key. Well, what happened while he's in the studio, and he talks about this in his book, he says in his book that Don and George could not get along at all. As a matter of fact, they were bringing him in at different times to record their parts because they didn't want to be in the studio at the same time. And depending on who you listen to, it's so interesting going back. I listen to, interviews and read books and all this stuff to find out. And the stories change and they're all a little bit different, but there's a consistent thing. And Tom Werman talks about this, that there was a real this going on between Tom and George. And at one point, he had made some comment to George, says, man, I love that solo you did for Tooth and Nail. It's like the perfect solo. And it is, the solo that he did for Tooth and Nail is unbelievable. And so apparently he'd made some suggestion to him and said, I really need that kind of a solo in whatever, this other song. And George had been pushing back so much. And so at one point, as the legend goes, Tom Werman said, well, maybe you'd like to come in here and just take a swing at me. It got that bad. After that happened, Tom Werman left and he says, I can't work with this band. And he quit. And so what they had to do, that's why you have this associate producer, because even though they, for all intents and purposes, apparently finished all the basic tracks of the album and done most of the recording, they still had to finish doing the mixing and what have you. And so that's when they brought Roy Thomas Baker in to actually finish producing the album. And you'll see recorded by Jeff Workman. And that's also why they brought Michael Wagner in to be involved with that part of it. We didn't know it at the time, but this, even right here, was evidence of the dysfunction because Tom Werman could not stand being around them. He couldn't get, they couldn't get along with him. They weren't getting along with each other. So they had to bring in these other producers just to finish this record. And like I said, the context is what's so fascinating here, because here these guys are, their record contract is hanging by a thread. And they can't get along still just to save their career.